this is Barry Malphurs. I'm the chairman of the policy committee, have been for about, I don't know, a couple of years now, as long as I've been on the commission, I think, and almost 2 years. And I'm also vice chairman of the commission. We'd welcome everybody who decided to come to listen to our meeting here today of the policy committee. And I'm going to call the meeting to order. It's September 14th at 3:07. We apologize that we're not on time, but just one of those things with technology, the way we have to deal with it. And I guess we should just be thankful we have technology to be able to do this with. So at all. So the first item on the agenda, of course, is calling the meeting to order, which I just did. The next item is to the statement of announcement, which I'm going to ask Lori Manus to read on my behalf, please.
A meeting notice announcing the date, time, and place of the September 14th, 2021 Policy Committee meeting was distributed September 10th, 2021 to appropriate media and other groups or individuals who have requested notification. The announcement and agenda were posted at the Department of Disabilities and Special Needs Central Administrative Office and on the website. The public has been notified that accommodations such as interpreters, mobility assistants, or other assistance will be provided to individuals with disabilities and special needs if requested in advance.
Thank you very much. The next item on the agenda is the invocation, which I'll give very quickly. Dear Lord, thank you for allowing us to be here, and thank you for allowing us to do the work of DDSN, particularly as it relates to the policy committee. I am very thankful to be a part of the policy committee and to have made the differences that we've been able to make in that regard over the last months. And we pray that whatever decisions we make here today will be pleasing to you and ever mindful to all citizens of our state. In Jesus' name we pray, amen. The next item on the agenda is the adoption of the agenda. I think everybody knows that this committee runs, or should know by now, that this committee runs through what Robert's Rules of Order calls unanimous consent. So therefore, if you have an objection to something that I say, please do object. I will not bother to say I need a motion and a second for each one of these things. So I'm just going to say that if I do not hear any, and by the way, that's on the 12th edition of Robert's Rules of Order, page 48, if anybody wonders or tries to say that I'm just making this up, because I'm not. It's called unanimous consent. So if anybody, so if I don't hear any objection, we're going to adopt the agenda as written. With no objection, the agenda is adopted as written. The first item on the agenda is items that are retained by the policy committee, and the first one on this list is the voluntary contributions and donations policy, which we've decided to take up here today.
Barry, are we approving the notes from the August 10th?
Oh, sorry, I forgot to do those. Sorry, I got to go back. We need to approve it's actually a summary of notes from the last meeting. It's not on my list. Oh yeah, it is. I'm sorry, I've skipped it. We need to approve the notes from the last meeting. I don't see any difficulties with them. So if I don't hear any objections, we're going to approve that as written.
I had no changes.
What changes do you have?
Sorry. I had no changes. I apologize.
Okay, all right. Okay. And then hearing no changes, it's adopted as written. Now the next item on the agenda is 200-04 DD, which is voluntary contributions and donations. Is the first item, first policy we're going to take up here today. The first thing on voluntary contributions and donations that I wanted to bring up is that this first thing I want to say is this hasn't been going through in a long time, and all the way back to Tom Wearing time with DDSN, and to me, and I want to know what, of course, obviously looking for the rest of the committee's response, but to me, it should not go to the, if anything under, this thing says, if anything over, I think anything under $1,000 could go to our director of finance, but I think anything over $10,000 should be brought to our executive director's attention, and then they should discuss what should be done with that $10,000 if it's not a restricted donation. So I would ask that we would change that to say that the executive director would, where it says Tom Weir, where it says, this one would say associate director of administration, but in reality, we don't have that anymore. It's the CFO. And so to me, donations received that are not restricted should go through her to decide if it's $10,000 or more, as I say. And I also think that we need to, on another matter on this same subject, I think we need to have some definition for what unrestricted means. It doesn't say anything about that on here. I know that unrestricted means there's no restriction for the donation, but we need to say something like that unrestricted means that the money can be spent any way that DDSN sees fit. See, it says, go ahead.
Yeah, so, sorry, Barry. So as I'm seeing the line proposed version, right, the with the changes in red, it actually has removed everything as far as the breakdown. It's got essentially less than 1,000 and more than 1,000, right? All the stuff that's blue, right, that's struck, that's all right, gone. That was gone under the new version, right? So we're not really dealing with that $10,000 value at all. It's basically anything over 1,000.
That's right.
Goes to the state operations and then director of finance.
That's right. And what I'm trying to say is that anything from 1,000 to 9,000 could go to the director of finance, but I'm saying anything over 10,000 should go through the executive director to see what they think it should be done with it, and not the director of finance, because the executive director needs to know that somebody gave $10,000.
Let me jump in here.
I can see exactly where Tom Wearing would be coming from, knowing a little bit about him, why he would want this in here like this, but I think things have changed a lot since then.
Let me jump in here. I wrote this Pat. Yeah.
Why did it say Tom Wearing signed it last then?
Well,
that was the previous. I think that was the previous time it was looked at. I mean, I think Pat's proposal is what's in red.
I did the edit. I did the edit.
Okay, all right.
And the concept I went from the edit was, on the front end, it was too ambiguous and loosey-goosey on restricted. So we require that anything that comes in restricted has to have a memo setting forth the restriction sent to the director of finance, who's not the CFO, that's the director of finance downstairs, who is more the administrator of the program. And then that way we get on record if there's a restriction. Anything that's not restricted is unrestricted. I do agree, we can might as well, unrestricted means we have complete discretion. I think that's a good addition. When it comes to the authorization levels, we kept it at, most of these go to the regional centers, and most of these go towards, events sponsored by the families and those type of groups. And so the regional centers do a lot of the authorization. So we wanted to give the regional center facility administrator the discretion of $1,000. Anything, if it's $1,000 under, they will approve it. When it goes to the finance director is not going to approve it for substance. They're just going to approve it that A, we have the money, and B, that the intent is consistent with whether it's restricted or not. And then from 1,000 or above, I decided to take the CFO out of the loop because this is more of an operational decision because most all the money goes through the regional centers. And the operational division associate director is the same level as the CFO. So I went with the simplicity rule that anything over 1,000 goes to one belly button, and that person makes all the decisions. And I think it's not an inappropriate raising of the authority level to such a high level, because when you're dealing with donations, I don't think we want those decisions to be made at a lower level because it could embarrass us. So that's why we got rid of the in-between money. So give the regional centers 1,000 discretion. Everything else will go to the associate director of operations. And then when it flows through finance, finance is not the decider. Finance is has a ministerial function where it will make sure we have the money and make sure that the intent of any restricted funds is met by the type of purchase. So that was the logic of why we did what we did.
My question though is, who is the decider for $10,000 or more of unrestricted money?
It's anything over $1,000 belongs to anything over $1,000 belongs to the associate state director for operations.
Okay, well, I don't even have any problem with it being $9,000 for the associate director of operations. But what I was saying was, if it was over $10,000, to me, that the executive director should know something about that and should be able to decide how that should go, and not the director of operations.
I agree. That's good. We can add that in there.
That's just my opinion. I mean, I'm just asking.
That's good. I agree.
Okay, that's all I was trying to get to, because I know we ended up with we could end up with as much as 10,000. We may never end up with 10,000. I understand what you're saying. Somebody wants to put on some kind of party for the people in the regional center and they want to donate $500 to do it. I understand that. I actually wish we could do a lot more of that kind of thing with the money that we have, so that it goes directly to the people that we serve instead of through the provider networks. But we don't do enough of that. But I wish we could do more. I shouldn't say I wish. I hope someday to figure out a way in which to do that. But anyway, so I'm thankful for whoever decides to donate. That's just what I wanted to bring up about that. Does anybody have any other changes or deletions or corrections to the voluntary contributions and donations? Hearing none, I'm going to assume that's going to be approved like it is written, or like I shouldn't say like it's written. I should say like Pat has like we just discussed, to change to 10,000 for the executive director.
We're going to define the unrestricted to there's no restrictions on unrestricted funds, and we'll add that $10,000 threshold for the state director to approve those.
Yeah, the way I've seen that in other things that people write for donations of money is any way that the organization sees fit. Okay. It would be unrestricted. Okay, that does that one. The next item on the agenda is the
Mr. Malfrost, if we make that change, do you want it to come back to the policy committee before it goes out for public comment, or can we make that change?
No, we need to make that change and put it. I'm sorry, we need to make that change, put it out to public comment for 10 days and see what occurs.
Okay, thanks.
And we will, as soon as we can approve it, we will approve it when it comes back.
Perfect, thank you. November. That'll be November. I was just making sure we didn't.
Yeah, as far as we know right now, it'll be November. I'll talk about that at the end of the day. The next item on the agenda is the code of conduct policy, and there's just a couple of things about the code of conduct policy I wanted to point out to see if anybody on the committee wanted to change. They may not, but there's just a couple of things I wanted to point out reading through it. I don't know. I'm kind of on the fence as to whether we should have this sentence in there or not. On page 7 of your packet, David, if you're following with me under
Yeah.
the code of conduct. It says, say again?
Yeah, go
You there,
ahead.
David?
I'm sorry.
Okay.
Yeah.
Under the code of conduct policy, it says gifts given by employer and coworkers are not prohibited. Do we think we should put some number in there to where over a certain amount of money is not prohibited? I mean, under a certain amount of money is not prohibited? Because I mean, that could be like, I mean, that could end up with a difficulty. It would seem to me if it was enough money that somebody gave somebody a gift for, if they were a coworker of somebody, like the executive director gave somebody a gift over a certain amount, or somebody gave somebody a gift over a certain amount.
Probably.
It just says none of those gifts are prohibited, and I'm a little bit surprised that none of those gifts are prohibited. But if they're not, shouldn't we have some value in there?
Barry, David.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think you need a limitation. The legislature has the no cup of coffee rule in their ethics law, which means you can't even take a cup of coffee from a lobbyist. Now, in this case, it's not a lobbyist. I don't know. I haven't read all the pages that are involved here, but I think you're probably right. There should be some kind of limitation, probably.
Would we say over? I mean, that's true. I mean, this thing talks about that we can take money from a lobbyist in a second, but over the code of ethics. But I'll get to that in a second. But this is just on the first part. Could we say that the gifts given by an employer or a coworker are not prohibited as long as it's under $1,000 in value?
I wonder what kind of example. Well, I'm kind of getting on up in age, and I don't recall ever being given gifts except at my birthday by a coworker or something like that. But
yeah, I think it's or Christmas parties, right? People do exchanges, gifts.
Yeah.
I mean, we've given, what do we do in December? We've handed stuff out to staff, right? We gave a baby gift, a baby shower gift, right? I mean, those sort of little personal gifts, I think is what it's intending to say, that if we want to put a dollar value on it,
what do you think about, nothing over $50? What about something like that? Is that, I mean, if we're just talking about little personal gifts and stuff like that, I mean, nobody's trying to bribe anybody at that sort of level. The question would be, it seems to me like if there's somebody on the outside of the employment spectrum that's giving something and expecting, I don't know, some kind of special treatment because they gave them a $100 gift certificate. But
this particular section is limited to just the employer and coworkers. I mean, that's right. Not what's addressed in this particular sentence.
I'm not even sure, since it's that kind of delineation. I don't even know if it's necessary even to mention an amount. I mean, just one coworker is going to give another coworker, a $250. That doesn't make any sense. But
well, I mean, they could, and I'm just saying the employer. I mean, the executive director could, in theory, give somebody a big gift, and I don't know. You just wonder. I don't know. I mean, some of these executive staff people make good salaries, and so I just wonder, or in my opinion, good salaries. So I don't know. Maybe we shouldn't put an value, but right now, an employer can give a coworker, any employee can give any coworker any amount of money they want to, and it's not prohibited under this law.
And the question is, Barry, wherein is the conflict? If somebody wants to do that, I guess is, and why because every time we add something, I mean, we're adding something to, I don't want to become so bureaucratic that we're trying to monitor everything that goes on.
Yeah. I mean, the issue is not value. The issue is why it's being given. You can give a gift for $1 if it's being given for improper influence and it's bad, and it can be for $100,000. And if that's a good point. Has nothing to do with it. Yeah. I mean, I think I think if anything, the clarification, I would say gifts given by your employer or coworkers are prohibited as long as they're not intended to violate this ethical duty. An ethical duty that's up front is may not accept any gift given as a result of their employment with the state, right? In other words, to reach some benefit from that employment. So,
Right, that's what I'm
I would
trying to
almost
get
go
to.
the other way.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I would say if anything we had anything, I would just say gifts are not prohibited as long as they're not intended to violate these ethical rules.
Oh, there you
Right?
go.
In other words,
That maybe summarize it. Yeah, that gets to the point and leaves wide open. You know, if somebody just, I mean, if Pat, for instance, did decide that he wanted to give me a birthday present, even though it would be 4 days late, I would say he should be able to do that, right, Pat?
I'm thinking about doing it right now, sir.
Well, okay.
This is funny. Okay.
Think about it, medical certificate for you.
The way to word this, if somebody wants to help me, might be where it says on the next paragraph that it says by the state prescribed by principle up to amount subscribed by the state ethics commission. So maybe we should say as long as it is copacetic with the, not copacetic, but as long as it's agrees with the state ethics commission.
Yeah.
The way I phrase it, gifts given by employer coworkers are not prohibited as long as the gift is not intended as a violation of the ethical principles of this policy.
That's good.
Okay, we'll do that. Does everybody got that?
That's broad. I think it makes it real clear what you're looking for, right? You're not supposed to violate these. There's a big difference between a birthday gift and you're trying to influence somebody.
Yeah, that's right.
That's all I was getting at. Yeah. All right. Does everybody got that? The next thing I wanted to point out, I'm just pointing it out, is I'm truly primarily pointing it out, but it says gifts that include travel. It's on the same page. It says gifts that include travel, lodging, and meal expenses on behalf of an employee to participate in a work-related event which are otherwise paid by DDSN is a gift to DDSN and not to the individual employee, and not prohibited within the following two exceptions. And it says that a state agency may never give or give gifts from a lobbyist. And the second one is that a state agency may never receive a gift from a lobbyist principal up to an amount prescribed by the state ethics commission. I'm assuming that seems fine to everybody in this room.
David, maybe you said, what's the difference between a lobbyist and a lobbyist principal? I'll be honest, I don't know.
What's the difference in a lobbyist and a lobbyist principal? Was that what you asked?
Well, what I was asking was, is this worded correctly? Because it just doesn't seem like it is to me. And what is the difference in a lobbyist? That's a good question. A lobbyist and a lobbyist.
Well, the lobbyist is registered with the state, and the lobbyist principal is the entity that hires the lobbyist.
Okay.
And some things are prohibited for. I mean, the lobbyist principal, the lobbyist can do nothing in the legislature to give a legislator, and probably that extends out to all employees. Whereas a lobbyist principal could be open to holding parties, I mean, and receptions and stuff like that. So the principals can do anything they want, but when they hire the lobbyist is prohibited.
So you think that's worded correctly right there, David?
Seems it. Yeah, seems it.
Okay, I just want to make sure. It just did. I should say I didn't know if it was worded correctly. I don't really have anything else on this policy, I don't think, that I wanted to bring up. Well, actually it is. There is one other thing that I think is important. Two other things, actually. I'm sorry. I thought that was it, but it's not. Rule number 7 right here, where it says employees that depart from state government, that says for 1 year. I believe that should say for 2 years that somebody should not be able to do these certain things. Do y'all think 2 years is too long? It's rule number 7 on page 11.
is that set by the code section? The length of time? That's what's referenced on there.
Well, I guess we need to figure that out, don't we? We can't violate the code, but if that,
Right.
we need to find out if that's what that says for sure. I guess you're right.
Well, what staff
Looking
say?
at the-
I think it's in the code.
Yeah, it's in the code.
Yeah, the code, I'm
Yeah,
looking at it,
okay.
Rebecca. The code says a formal public official, public member, or public employee holding public office, membership or employment after 1982 may not for a period of 1 year after terminating his public service or employment serve as a lobbyist to represent clients before the agency.
Okay, I
Except
guess.
employee
Yeah.
name. It's
Okay.
that's in line with the statute. That's
The other one I wanted to mention on this policy, I guess we can't change it then. The other one I wanted to mention on the policy is under rule number 8. It says employees must be, if they violate the violation of the code of conduct or any federal law or regulation, you must report any action to DDSN that results in substantial abuse, and all that. And I was just going to say that we should add to that that if they don't do that, that it could lead to up to termination. It doesn't say that down here. But with this whistleblower protection stuff on number 8, it should say if they don't do that, it could lead to termination, shouldn't it? In other words, if they violate this.
honestly, I think it should apply to all of the elements.
Well, it certainly should be added to this one. It should be added to all of them, really. But certainly it should be added to that one. Because that
we could do that. I have no objection to that. We also could under after the general policy, right, where they list out the 5 principles, should be guided first and foremost by the principles. We could put a catch-all of violation of any of these principles is grounds for discipline up to and including termination. And then we can re-emphasize that, or we can just put it under the one.
I think we should, my personal opinion is we should re-emphasize it both places, but yeah, that's a good idea. Does everybody with us understand what we're saying?
Yeah, so you're talking, you guys are saying under general policy, which is on page 2, to add a statement to the end of that.
Before they
The
extend.
violation of any of these policies could lead, it could be any one thing up to termination. Gary said it right. How do you say
violation? Yeah. Violation of any of these principles may result in discipline up to and including termination.
Yeah, just disciplinary action up to and including termination, and that should be reiterated. Because I think this whistleblower thing is so important. It should be reiterated down there where it says must report a violation of substance abuse, malice, discretion, or loss of public funds or resources on page 11 of my book, which is page 3, I think, of this one under Rule 8. We should put both of those sentences in both of those sections. That sentence in both of those sections.
So you would like it in the general policy section, and then you would like to state it again.
Under where it says Rule 8, right before you get to reporting requirements.
Okay, gotcha.
And then the last thing I was going to say about this policy, I promise I'm going to leave you all alone about it. I'm sorry to take so long with it. Is it says no later than 180 days. The reports must be verbal or written as soon as possible after the employees first learns of the wrongdoing, but not less than 180 days, not later than 180 days of the date of reporting the employees first learns of the wrongdoing. It needs to be a lot less than 180 days for somebody to learn of wrongdoing and not report it. 180 days is 6 months. Why would it be 180 days? Why wouldn't it be 60 or? What? Somebody's speaking in that ain't supposed to be, I think.
Yeah, I don't know.
It wasn't me. It wasn't me. I was on mute.
Well, I know it wasn't you. You can speak anytime you want to, man. But I'm just asking, should we cut that down dramatically from 180 days to some number? I would think you would want to cut it down. I mean, y'all can read that again, but
is there anything else in our reporting procedure that references that 180-day mark? I'm just trying to figure out where that. I agree that.
That's a good question for all of our. Do we know if there's anything that references 180 days I mean, that needs to be changed in whatever policy we have. But I mean, I would certainly think it needs to be changed in this one because this is the code of conduct policy. This is the one that everybody has to read when they start working here and all that. So I would ask, does anybody know the answer to that one? Pat or Lori?
We can ask HR, but I'm not aware of anything.
I mean, don't the current abuse and neglect reporting requirements basically say immediately? I mean, I don't recall anywhere else where there's a 180-day gap, right?
Well, they're certainly not. What I think we should change that to is 60 days, from 180 to 60, and then we should see if there's any other one and make it consistent with 60.
Yeah, I'm not even sure we have that. I mean, as soon as possible seems to me to be the right standard.
As soon as possible and not less than 60 days. I'm not more than 60 days or not more than 30 days even, sorry with me.
I was trying to check the state human resources.
There's this, you listen to a commission meeting, well, everybody at that way?
Well, they're not at it. It's a policy meeting.
No.
They changed the time to 3:30. I don't know what to do.
This is Liz. I'm not aware of any other policy that indicates 180 days on anything except for our, the only thing would be our substandard performance, which you can place people in substandard performance for 30, 60, or 90 days. But I'm not aware of any 180-day policy.
Okay, well, this one has it and we need to change it. So the question is, what do we need to change it to? 30 or 60 or what? Would you recommend? Or what does the committee recommend? Does it need to be 30 or 60 down there? That's why I'm glad I'm looking at this. That's one of the reasons. But anyway.
Well, if you want, Barry, if you want it tighter, I've got no problem with making it a lesser time.
How about 60 days?
I'm fine with that.
How about as soon as possible or not later than 60 days? All right, we got it. All right, because I mean, it just infuriates me that this thing would be 180 days down here. But anyway, it amazes me that would be 180 days. But anyway, so let's change that to 60, and then that's all I have down on the policy. I know little things infuriate me, but everything in the world infuriates me. A lot of things, not everybody, but a lot of things. David, you don't infuriate me. You're a nice fellow. But anyway. Next item on the agenda is, the next thing is, if we change that to 60 from 180, then that's all that I had on this policy. And if there's no other changes to the policy, it'll be changed to that amount. Then we'll put that out for, well, we don't put this one out public comment, I don't think, do we?
No, but Commissioner Malphurs, I think you had one other area of the policy that you wanted to change on page 4, where you wanted to remove the language and refer to the directive on outside employment.
Oh, yes, of course, that was very important. I'm so sorry.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure you went over
I forgot that. Yes, I wanted to change that to say for where it, I got to go back to my main note for that. Where it currently says that under outside, I mean, in this policy, it says, I wanted to make, it says employees are not, we're going to strike out where it says employees may not have outside employment which creates a conflict. And we're going to take that sentence out, and we're going to add, refer to DDSN Directive 41309 DD, which is outside employment for employment outside of DDSN. In other words, we're just allowing this policy to ask that you would also look at the outside employment policy, because they're both very similar and very important. So so if somebody looks at one, hopefully they'll look at both. That's the point of that. But yeah, we definitely want to do that. Sorry, I didn't say that. If nobody has an objection to that, that's all the changes to the outside employment. I mean, to this policy. Sorry, I got to get back to where I was now.
So we can make those changes, and we don't have to send it out for public comment, but we can send it out for public comment if you guys would like.
I don't think this needs to be out for public comment. This is not, I don't think, what does the committee think? I think it absolutely is not a public comment thing. This is an HR, more of an HR issue than a public comment issue to me. I mean, if somebody listening has a public comment, they can make it, but I mean, I don't think it should be out for public comment.
I don't think anything that we've made is exactly going to be controversial. Any changes that we've made.
I would hope not. I would hope it would just be improving and not controversial, which is part of the point of doing this. But anyway, okay, so if there's, then we're not going to put it out for public comment. We're just going to change it, and then we'll, we will, well, how are we going to approve it?
Commission for the next
Well, or we can either present it now to the commission, or we can wait until.
right. So we can bring it back to the.
We can technically bring it back tomorrow to the commission meeting, right?
We can do that.
Okay, we can do that. Okay, that's what we'll do.
Yeah.
I'll just ask
Thursday,
it.
right?
Do what?
Thursday, not tomorrow.
Sorry, Thursday. I'm sorry. We got, well, yeah, we got another meeting tomorrow, so I'm thinking, anyway, I'm good. All right.
That's right in my head.
Yeah, I'll actually be there tomorrow anyway, so yeah, it kind of sticks in my head, but anyway. And I apologize, I'm not there today. I just can't be there every day. I'd like to be, but that's another story. Anyway, so that we'll do that, and then we'll bring it up to the commission on Thursday. The next policy to look into for just a moment today is individuals involved with the criminal justice system. And Gary, this is your department, I'm sure much more than mine, but there's just a couple things I wanted to ask about that haven't already been changed. I mean, there's obviously some changes on here you can see. The under number B on page 14, David, on our packets, it says the case manager, qualified intellectual disability professional, or other DDSN contracted service provider should not post bond for an individual. I would think that should say not only that, but it should say any employee of DDSN should also not post no bond for anybody like that. Not just those people. Shouldn't it be those people and anybody?
Well, I think the limitation is the policy only addresses individuals who are receiving services, right? So, I mean, that, and it's a different sort of, and I can tell you, you've got more than one judge who doesn't really understand the relationship between a provider and an individual, who will think that the provider has some sort of, control over the individual, greater control of the individual than is actually the case. But I think what you're talking about there, Barry, falls outside the scope of the policy. I don't even necessarily know we need to have a policy to say that we don't provide bond for employees. This is all about the individuals receiving
No, I'm talking about
services,
no
right?
employee should be able to post bond for a person receiving services. I'm not talking about, you may have it backwards. What I'm saying is, this says that case managers can't post bond. Well, I should not post bond, and I think it should say should not post bond. I think it said cannot post bond, and I think it said any employee of DDSN should not be able to post bond either. And it shouldn't say should not, it should say cannot post bond. In other words, if somebody's employed by us, they've broken our rules by posting a bond for somebody. Wouldn't that be appropriate?
Well, I mean, shall not, may not, cannot it's sort of.
Well, I mean, it said this thing says should not. That's a difference between should not and cannot. I shouldn't do a lot of things. I shouldn't drink as many Coke as I do. I only drink 1 or 2 a week, but I shouldn't even drink that. But I do. But if I was married, my wife said I could not, that's different. But I'm not married, and she ain't gonna say that to me anyway. But I don't think a woman would say that to me. But anyway,
well, even if she says you could not, you can still do it. You just have to suffer the consequences. Trust me, I know that all the time. You can ask my wife. That's all the time.
Well, that's true. Actually, I understand what you're saying. You got consequences. But yeah. But anyway, they should not do it. They cannot do it unless they break our rules.
Right. Right.
And then so we should say cannot, and we should say shouldn't we say any employee, or you think not, Gary?
I
don't see why you wouldn't say any employee.
Yeah, I mean, the difference is, if you have somebody who's a DSP that wants to assist with that, they're not doing that on behalf of the agency. They're doing it in their individual capacity. So, I mean, I can't, I can see a situation where a DSP, wants that for somebody in the, and so I can see where an individual may have a desire to do something that's different from an agency standpoint wanting to do that, right? Because an individual using their own funds to do that is different than an agency somehow agency funds. That's the difference between the two. I guess the question is do we have the right to tell a DSP how they can spend their money after they earn their salary?
Well, I think we can say that they can't post bond for somebody they serve. I mean, are they that they serve because they get paid by us to serve them? I mean, we can't say they can't spend their money however they want. But I don't know. That just don't seem right to me. But I mean, I'll leave it alone if you want to. If David agrees that we should leave it alone.
I'm kind of curious.
Well, I'm a little confused about what Directive 100-09-DD is. I don't see the directive. What are we talking about? Someone we're serving in one of the regional centers, and they commit a crime
we're talking about people that are receiving services that commit a crime and they're involved in the criminal justice system. And
so is that directive 100-09-DD?
No, it's 50301DD. We're on the next one. Well, I guess we're on this one. We're on 50301DD. It's called individuals involved in the criminal justice system.
Yeah, I'm on page 14 under reporting where it says boards, providers, DDSN regional centers.
Right.
That's at the top. That's at the top. Are you on a different page?
No, I'm on, that's my page.
All right. Then it says on the second line, in accordance with Directive 100-09-DD. What is that? That's apparently controlling, and I don't know what that is exactly.
That's the critical incident policy, I believe.
So this would relate specifically to a person that is one of our clients, right?
Correct.
And being
That's right.
and being served. And
That's
so
right.
what this is saying, if this person is involved in a crime that gets them locked up, then under sub I, under 1 sub I, the case manager, who is the provider apparently, should or must not post bond for the incarcerated individual.
That's right.
So that would be apparently something we've seen happen. The case manager post bond for the individual.
I don't know.
I mean, we've seen that.
Commissioner Thomas, if I may jump in, Steve Von Holland here. I am the author of this particular directive. Been here for a while. It's not something that's common practice. I would call it extremely rare, but it has happened. So
the case manager. So the idea would be the case manager is so close to the individual that got arrested that the case manager, so I'm just going to post the $1,000 bond myself for him.
Yes, sir. And I would say I can think of one incident that happened probably 10, 15 years ago. And it was out of the goodness of the case manager's heart, appreciate, the fact that she was concerned and wanted to see her consumer bonded out. But when he was bonded out, he was not bonded out to a situation where he needed to be. So I think the thinking is it's just not good practice for us to get in the middle of that much in the weeds of the criminal justice system as far as the bond.
I see what your point is now. Do you want to say should or must not or may not?
Is that the question to me? Should not, but we can, certainly revise that if the committee here feels that it would be more appropriate to use a different word.
I think it should absolutely say cannot.
That's a squishy word. Should, well, I mean, you bring them into your office and you say, now, you shouldn't have done that. Well, that's how I did it. It just says should. It doesn't say I may not.
Sure, I've got no problem with that.
What about any other employees, man? You think it should be any employee should be able to do that other than a case manager?
Well, that's just never come up. I mean,
it could come up. So you think?
Yes, sir, certainly could. And so, I mean, we could certainly add that into there, something to say, or any DDSN employee. I've never seen.
Well, the point is you're trying to keep the case manager from getting involved in the criminal aspect when, if they're released, they could end up in a situation upon being released that wouldn't necessarily be a DDSN oversight, but you're muddying the water by the case manager getting the bond. And I think that's where that was the illustration you gave, I believe, a minute ago. So it should say that the case manager may not post bond. I think is I think is the bottom line for what you're trying to get to. So understanding now what you have said, I would beef it up and not have any. And if you're going to tell them no, don't sort of be squishy about it. Say no.
Point well taken.
Mary's question is should we broaden it outside of people at the case manager level to go to a broader level to any staff member, include that? So that would be DSP on up to the executive director, essentially.
Yeah, you can. I
Right.
think I think it does become a little bit. I mean, if I'm a case manager and I really think that this arrest was outrageous and it's better that my guy not be in there. Well, okay, I'm going to get my cousin Eddie to do it. Here, Eddie, take $1,000 and get my guy out. I mean, they're gonna kill him in there. I mean, yeah, there are ways around it, unless you want to take 5 pages and you know. I think you've made the point by saying the case manager may not, and to just leave it at that pretty much.
I don't know why, but okay. All right. Well, the only other thing I was going to ask is it says we took out on number 6 right there. It says we took out the CM, or I don't like these anonyms, by the way, in this thing either. It should be spelled out. It says the CM or the QIPD, and those kind of things should never be in a policy. They should be spelled out of a policy. That should never be in a policy that way, for one thing. And for another thing, who are they, for one? And for another thing is it says contracted service provider should not make any agreements with the court, solicitor, or public defender. But there again, I don't know if that should say just those people, which we got to figure out who CMs are and QIPDs are, and I mean QIDPs are. But I think that should also say, or should have said, any other employee of DDSN, because we don't need to be, any employee of DDSN don't need to be making deals with the solicitor or anybody else about somebody receiving services. It seems to me. I mean, if they're not receiving services there, that's fine, but they're receiving services from us and we shouldn't be influencing them in any way. I mean, I don't think.
I don't have an opinion about that. That under I above, where we have been for some time, that the case manager, qualified intellectual disability professional, or CMQIDP, or any other DDSN contractor. So that's, you know, you got it there, Barry. Are you just saying that at each time they say CMQIDP, that should instead be that they should use the specific wording as under I? Is that what you want?
Yeah, well, I'm saying that. I'm saying, of course, we should do that. We should spell out any. You don't have any abbreviations in policies, so you of course spell out the words. But the other thing is, should that say any other employee, or do we mind if any other employee gets involved with this matter of DDSN? Here we go again. About, I mean, employees shouldn't be involved with people in criminal situations, and it doesn't seem to me. I mean, with our customers that are, I mean, with our well,
then add on this under I, and I'm under incarceration. Should may not post bond for the incarcerated individual, and then period, nor shall any of the above referenced individuals working as case manager, qualified intellectual disability professional, or any other DDSN contractor service provider become involved with, and then you kind of go down to item 6, and pick up should not make any agreements or interfere, or something. You could expand that idea, Barry, if you just wanted to try to become global in saying you stay out of, when this becomes incarceration, somebody's charged with a crime, you stay out of it. And so you're trying to delineate, stay out of it, by way of saying you can't get involved in bond setting, you can't get involved in the legal process, you know, stay out, because at that point in time, lawyers are involved, and we don't need the non-trained folks fighting the legal battles for DDSN or privately. So
exactly.
Why don't we just add on? Why don't we just technically add on the global prohibition, and and you could do it under I, presume.
I guess you could do it under I and do it for, and say, well, or do it right under the one and say that for all these things. But certainly it should be under 6 and under I, both of those, what you just said. But those, but
well,
case.
let's see if staff can't come up with the wording. Gary, am I sort of on track? What do you think?
I think you're on track. I think you're on track, David. Yeah.
Okay.
I would back to staff to get that word now.
Okay, so we're after, if I could say to staff, to Lori, if we could just at some appropriate point, and it might be under I, you might find it better under a different one, but I would say it as early as possible. Adopt Barry's global sort of prohibition that it is the policy of DDSN.
Employee or contracted provider.
So we could just kind of.
Exactly. Yeah. Add that on. It is the
I just think
right.
No employee of DDSN or any of its contracted providers.
Yeah.
There you go.
That's, yeah.
And we're wanting to keep them out of we're wanting to, for instance, 6, or was it 6, or I think it was 6 that said, they don't have the authority to negotiate with solicitor and all that. So they
Right.
got to stay out. Once somebody's been arrested, okay, you love this person, you tried to help this person, but at this point in time, you can't get involved in the legal matters. You just can't. But that's what Barry is trying to say and keep from happening. And I think the gentleman who made the proposal is basically, that's where he's wanting us to go to get some definition about what constitutes proper behavior in helping people versus after an incident and an arrest. Sorry, that we got a demarcation here. You can't go there and don't get involved, because that's really going to screw things up potentially.
Exactly. That's what I'm getting
So
at.
if staff could just come up with that, I mean, that might, I don't want to spend it's 4 o'clock and we've been on stuff for about an hour. That's about all my brain is good for, is about an hour and 15 minutes. But if we spend too much more time on this, I mean, we're going to end up rewriting the whole page. And if my suggestion, Barry, is that just let staff work on it, and then let's see what we got. Either Thursday, because I think we all know where we want to go. Let's just see if staff can't put it together and get it right.
I think my opinion would be, let us work on it and we'll bring it back to the next policy committee meeting.
That's fine with me. If
That's
there's
fine
not
with me.
a chair, I think we're all together, and I think staff knows exactly what we need.
Yep.
Thank you very much for the input.
Okay. The last thing I was going to say about that very quickly is where it says qualified assurance prevention. It says, if able, the Office of General Counsel and Office of Clinical Services staff will provide training. I just would say if requested, not if able. And same goes for number 3. Should say if they request training, they get it, but I don't see why. If we're able, of course we're able. The question is, do they request it and do they want it? That was the only thing I was going to say about that. But y'all can bring that back to us.
Dave, did you get
At
where
the
that
next-
is? You know where that is.
I've got one thing on this, Barry, before we move on, that I really want to bring to staff's attention. I think needs to be addressed.
Go ahead.
Going back up, page 15, as the first paragraph, under forensic examination court orders, there's an exclusion in that first paragraph for charges in magistrate and municipal court, and that's no longer the law. They've changed that, where a magistrate or municipal court judge may now require that an evaluation as to competency can be done on their level of charges, and that the prosecuting agency has to cover the cost of that. So it used to be that magistrate judges didn't do that, but that change has been made.
So
So I'm wondering
Commissioner,
why we have exclusion under there.
Okay, well, and that has been the, exclusion, and like you said, until recently where that ruling, we have not gotten any of those yet, and my understanding
Sure.
is, I think that's what I just heard you say, was that that can happen, but it has to be at the expense of either the solicitor or the defense attorney, is that correct?
No, it says specifically that it's at the expense of the prosecuting agency. So whether that's a solicitor or whether if you have a municipality that has a city solicitor's office or a sheriff's department where there's, not an attorney involved with it, the deputies prosecuting the case, it's always on the prosecuting side of things.
So that's why we haven't gotten any, because they have to pay for it.
Sure, I get it. Listen, as soon as that's brought up by the judges, we see him being dismissed. But I don't think we can have a policy that flies directly in the face just because it hasn't happened yet.
No, I absolutely agree with you. So what we can do is revise that. Well, what we'll do is just basically take that out, don't you? Do you think?
I don't know why
that'd be sufficient?
Take the unless out.
Yes.
And it's also somewhere else in the document, not to belabor the meeting, but we'll go through and make sure that that is taken out of there. Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. With those changes, we'll bring those back to the policy committee meeting whenever we meet next, which will likely be November, but we're not 100% sure about that yet. We're 90% sure that's true, but I wanted to say something about that at the end, which I will say. But the next item, the last one that we're really going through today is, except for me to go very quickly on the last set, is the National Voter Registration Act, and we can table this until the next meeting if you'd like to. I don't mind. But there was just one thing I wanted to add into this act. I know we have to be very careful with this act because people can vote for any reason and all this sort of thing. But I think somewhere in there it needs to say, where it talks about people registration to vote and voting, I mean, it needs to say somewhere in there that as long, I know that they can vote as long as they're not declared incompetent, but it needs to say somewhere in there that it's prohibited by law for any of us or provider or anybody else to try to in any way influence how somebody votes.
Commissioner Malfris, this is Commissioner Rawlinson. I'd like to chime in on that for a second, if I may. I know we have had problems in Florence County that the drivers and those bringing our patients from PD Center to the voter registration office to vote do not know the election law rules, and they have been actually stopped by state legislators from taking the patients or the consumers into the centers and then standing with them at the voting blocks. The problem is they can go in with them, but they're not allowed to go to the voter block with them unless the person actually asks for assistance. So the person has to ask for assistance, and then they can't touch the screen. The person has to touch the screen that is actually doing the voting. So there is some major issues with regards to this that DDSN needs to look into. One needs to be to assure that our people that are taking these people to the polls have gone through some poll training and have read the poll manager's handbook as to what their responsibilities and abilities are and are not. Because that is a major issue in the counties where we have regional centers that has come to being brought to my attention by multiple state legislators.
That kind of thing sounds good to me. They need to have read the book, and they also need to understand that they cannot vote for somebody else. I mean, they cannot vote on. That's what I'm trying to get to. It is prohibited for them to go in there and vote for somebody, which I think, which I would not be surprised at all if that occurred. And they cannot. That's right. They cannot do it unless they're asked. Unless they ask for assistance. If they don't ask for it, they don't get it. And if they can't ask for it, they don't get it. I mean, we can't just assume they need it. And they need to understand that before they ever go to the polling place, that they can't just get assistance by the person that's taking them there just because. They have to ask, and if they don't ask, they don't get it.
I believe that falls under
Doesn't it-
our responsibility to educate with regards to that. And so I'd like to see, when we look at this policy, I want to make sure we take on the responsibility of educating our employees to that fact. So just put that somewhere in y'all's mind when you go to work on this.
It is.
Doesn't it already say that assistance in the voting place can't be given by staff to DSN boards, contracted providers, or regional centers? I mean, they can ask for assistance, but it can't be provided by the staff. It's got to be provided by somebody at the voting place, right? It says that.
Well, it does say that. It does say that, but it doesn't say specific enough that they can't vote on somebody, that they can't go in there and vote for, vote, you know, they can't go in there and vote. And it does say that that's prohibited. Say again?
Yeah. I think Stephanie's idea of educating the people that are assisting with that is an excellent one, but I mean, I think we've already got a prohibition about our staff members being in the voting place. It says that.
Well, it does say that in there. I think we need to make it, I don't know how we need to make that more clear, but it does say that in there, because I did remember seeing that. But we need to say.
Well, I do know it. I do know they were stopped several times this last election cycle. So just be aware of that.
We need to say that they need to read the voting. I mean, they need to get a copy of the voting God, what is that? The poll watchers.
Well, it's the code section that it's the code section that applies, Barry, to you know what proper procedures are and all that. We're okay. So where are we now? Where are we going on this? I'm a little confused.
We're trying to add in that the people that bring people to the polls, it says in there they cannot vote for them. Each provider and region will they provide forms, but it doesn't say that they are prohibited from. It doesn't say clear enough that they are prohibited, that somebody that takes them to the poll is prohibited from voting for them, and it doesn't say that they need to be aware of what the code section says in this regard specifically. In other words, that they need to be reiterated that they can't. It needs to be reiterated that they cannot vote for them and they cannot take them in unless they're asked, just like this thing says. And if they can't ask, they can't get assistance, because it happens all the time. When I used to work at polling places many years ago, that happened, and it's completely wrong.
Then why don't we simply insert that workers for DDSN who are involved in transport of individuals seeking to vote are under the same strictures as anyone at the polling place who cannot assist without certain guidelines, and you could name exactly what the code section is. That's got to be in the code somewhere or a regulation, so that would enable then somebody who's a poll watcher to say, hey, just because you showed up doesn't mean you can't you can't slip and slide on what the law is. And here's the law.
Right,
you can't do what you're trying to do. So all we need to do is have staff then to cite the code section, reference its applicability to the individuals that are coming from the centers, and that then would take care of the problem. Then a co-worker, knowing that this has been perhaps an issue in the past, is ready to go and say, you can't do what you're doing. Here's the regs as far as DDSN's procedural things, and you're under the same obligation as everybody else. You're covered for not being allowed to do certain things, and just use the code section to apply. And that should end the issue then.
Well, yeah, and insert the code section where it is applicable.
That's it. That's what I just said. Insert the code. If we could just have staff to do that, the staff can find the applicable code statement is applicable to them also, and they are prohibited from doing everything that the code says should not be done or may not be done relative to voting practices. And then a code, then if there's somebody who's either a poll watcher or somebody at the tables who's sort of up on this, if there's been an issue with any of the centers exceeding, somebody, trying to do good, but exceeding authority, they just show them the code section and say, you can't do what you're doing. And that's the end of story.
So,
Guys, I have a question. Yeah, hang on just one sec for me. This is the policies about voter registration under the National Voter Registration Act. We're injecting a lot of stuff that has to do with actually voting, which is a separate thing. Do we have a separate policy with regard
that was exactly
to
what I was
assistance?
trying to, that's exactly what I was
Yeah,
trying to
so
inject.
I think we need to see the other, because I think we're conflating two separate things, trying to address a voting problem. And this policy is directed solely, or is basically supposed to be about registration and what our obligation is under the registration requirements,
Right.
because it's broader.
Yeah.
So
My suggestion would be that we look at this policy around registration and determine if it has any issues. And then if you guys would like for us to draft a policy around assistance with voting, we could take a stab at that. But this one really is just about the federal requirement around registration. And the only thing it really says is that the person has to be able to ask for assistance with the voting process. And then we could come up with another policy around assistance if you guys would like.
Well, or we could call this, we could make this one obsolete and add some stuff into this one, which would cover registration and voting, which I think would be better. To just make this one obsolete and just add both names on this where it says voter registration, call it voter registration and voting. And then add whatever we need to add for both in the same policy.
Okay. And I think it was initially on the schedule to be routed for the next policy committee meeting. So we'll try to go in and I think I understand where you guys
This is going to be complete before this year is out. I can tell you that. Because the next election, we're going to complete this before this year's out.
Lori, if you'll get with me, I taught voter registration, voter polling and voter poll watching. I can actually really help you with what the law says regarding that matter. So
perfect. Yeah, because right now, I don't think we have a policy around provision of assistance with voting. We just have this policy that talks about registration. So if we're going to write some instruction about what kind of assistance can be provided and how it can be provided, that'll kind of be all new language. So that'd be great. I'll get with you so you can help me with that.
Again, we can insert that into this and make it two different, same policy, but two different, titles. Okay, that's what we're going to do, and we'll look at that at the next meeting. Now, the next item on the agenda relates very quickly to really deferring policies to other places. Or for other referred to staff for review or referred to others for review. The first one is 212 DD management of funds for individuals, and the second one is 33403 DD, which is vehicle maintenance program. And the first one is going to go to the individuals for funds, for individual funds participating in community residential services needs to be, I was going to ask that we defer that to the internal auditor instead of the finance committee. And let them look at it first, and then if they want to bring it back to the finance committee, they can. But I would say that needs to go to the internal auditor, from what I can understand from that one.
Yeah,
If anybody-
so Commissioner Malfres, we just had two that were going to the Finance and Audit Committee, and that's Community Capital Funding Application 214 and 27501, which is missing property reporting. And then the rest of these were going to staff. So 212 DD would go to the internal audit staff. 33403, 50201, 60302, 60305, and then two sets of standards were being referred to staff already.
Okay, well, instead of referring the one to missing property to finance it, I was going to ask that we give that to internal auditor first.
Missing property.
Yeah.
That.
They can refer it and then give it to finance.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure. Okay.
And then the other thing was the community capital funding, that would be to of course to finance, and then the rest of these were just deferred to staff. But the only thing I wanted to add in about the vehicle maintenance program one is obviously that's deferred to staff, but I just wanted to say that we need to consider making that one obsolete and combining it with something else, because it seems like we'd have a vehicle maintenance program already. And it seemed like to me we wouldn't need a policy on that. We would need to just add it in with something else and make this policy obsolete, wouldn't we? Or, I mean, at least I just want y'all to consider that when you're looking into this.
Well, we can do that.
And then just like we're making the other one obsolete and combining it with two other things, the registration and voting. So technically we made the other one obsolete, and then we would add for both. But that was the only other thing I had, other than if there's no objection to those two things, we'll do that. And then if I hear no objection, and then the last thing to say is Ms. Manus wants to present a couple things to us.
Right. So
And then we're done.
I'm going to go back before I do the last directives about the directives that went out for public comment. So if we can go back for just a second to 41303, which is that code of conduct policy. The 180 days, actually, as we continue to talk, I learned that the 180 days is actually in the code of laws. It's in the whistleblower section. Hold on, I'm going to give you the code. It's in 8/27/10, where it talks about reporting. So I don't know if we want to change that to 60 days because that came directly from the code.
I'm surprised it would say that in the code, but
Yeah, it said the nature of the wrongdoing and the date or range of dates on which the wrongdoing allegedly occurred. A report must be made within 180 days of the date the reporting employee first learns of the alleged wrongdoing.
well, then you need to, well then, if that's true, I guess we have no choice. But what I'd say is that we need to reference that in the policy then directly, so that it would know why we were being so inadequate in that regard, is because we have to be.
Yeah, what we'll do is add the section code. How about that?
Yeah, that's a good idea.
To this language, and that way it'll show that our code of conduct policy references that because that's directly from code. Does that work?
Right. I love to reference policies whenever we can, and reference anything, reference one policy to another whenever we can. That's wonderful.
Okay.
So, given that, I have a question. Okay, so this section 8 is about whistleblower, right? And the initial focus is on the wrongdoing within the agency, right? As opposed to abuse, neglect type reports.
Right.
I think there is a difference between those.
Okay.
And I think we have a higher thing, and this may be a question where we need to get the legal opinion on that.
Okay.
But I think there is a different standard between what is contemplated under the whistleblower statute as opposed to what is contemplated under our requirements for reporting abuse and neglect. And I think that maybe that reference on that is causing us some issues right there. That maybe we just need to make clear that those things are separate, right? That whistleblower reports must be made verbally or in writing. But I don't know of anything that says abuse and neglect reports can be given that much of a.
No, in fact, I don't think abuse and neglect reports can be given 60 days, right? So.
Yeah, I mean, so I think that's, and just kind of looking at if that's, I don't want to conflate whistleblower and reporting abuse and neglect. Those are different things.
Okay.
Well, they are, but.
And I think that addresses Barry's issue with this as well, that we need to make clear that those are different. And maybe that's where we focus on, instead of just saying these reports, that it is whistleblower reports. Okay.
Well, that's probably, that would help. That's what I mean by being,
Yeah.
we have no choice but to be inadequate in this regard because the statute says so.
Yeah.
So then, yeah, you need to make it clear that that's only for whistleblowers only and it's not for anybody else and all that.
Okay.
Yeah, that needs to be made more clear.
And we may need to get, an opinion, again, from counsel on the question of how we address abuse and neglect reporting as a separate issue, right?
Yeah, we'll bring it back to you guys to the next.
Well, just
meeting.
say that it's an entirely separate issue is what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I agree with you, Barry. That kind of bugs me too, and I don't want to.
Right.
Right, I mean, it's just anyway. I don't know.
That's not something we want to be giving people leeway on.
Things. Anyway, do what?
That's not something we want to be giving people a lot of leeway on.
Sure.
Right, exactly. I 100% agree. But anyway, and I go overboard on a lot of things. I'm very passionate about little things, believe it or not. So anyway, we've deferred all these things to staff based on the information that I gave, and now I guess we're ready for Laura, your very quick report so we can get our meeting done.
So we did have 3 directives that were posted for public comment. They were out there until September 1st. 50210 DD was transition of individuals from regional centers to the community. We had 1 comment received after the deadline. We gave it consideration, but we finalized the directive. It'll be presented to the commission for signing at Thursday's commission meeting. 70003 DD, which was informed choice of living preferences for ICF IIDs. We did not receive any comments. It'll be finalized and presented to the commission for signing at the Thursday meeting. And then 73801 DD is discharge planning for those leaving ICF IIDs and enrolling in the ID waiver. We did not receive any comments on that directive. It'll be finalized and presented to the commission for signing at the September 16th commission meeting. So that's all I have.
Okay. The last thing I want to say is, would you make sure that all those things y'all correct tomorrow are printed off for me and given to me tomorrow afternoon when I see y'all, so that I can read them tomorrow night before Thursday?
The only one is 204 voluntary contributions.
Right. The only one that we're going to present is the 204 because we wanted to get some more clarification related to code of conduct, and we were going to take another stab at the 50301. So we'll have one that we can have prepped and ready for you to see before the commission meeting.
Okay, well, let me see that, and then because I need to get with you on what my sheet needs to say for the commission meeting anyway. So
Right.
We'll prep that.
Yeah, we'll get that too. We'll get that for you.
and you can just bring it. I'll just see when I see you tomorrow. I can get it.
Yeah, we can get it to you tomorrow.
God willing, I'll be there tomorrow in the middle of the day. So, okay. Is there any other? Well, the only thing I wanted to say is that as of now, we plan not to have a policy meeting in October. That could change based upon if there's some emergency issue or something that comes up. But as of now, we're planning that our next meeting would be November 9th. But I don't want to say that is carved in stone. It just all depends on if something comes up that we have to address. There's some reasons why we decided not to have a meeting in October, but I won't get into what they are, unless it's an emergency. So that's the way we'll leave that. But I'll talk to our chairman about that and see if there's any, and others on the commission to see if there's any emergency reason to meet. But otherwise, we will plan on our next. And if there is, it'll be posted like every other meeting. It will not be an emergency meeting. Excuse me. It'll be a regularly scheduled meeting, but we just don't have one right now. I'm sorry I used the word emergency. That was not intended. So, if there's no other, is there any other business to come before the committee? If I don't hear any, I'm gonna, I do need a motion for this. I need a motion to adjourn.
I move we adjourn.
Second.
We're adjourned. Thank you very much.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.